Have you ever stopped to think about what leads us to commit crimes? Is it something purely instinctive, or are we influenced by the circumstances around us? Throughout history, humanity has always had a complicated relationship with laws and norms. But what if we could understand the true reasons behind these actions? In this video, we will explore what would happen if the motivations that lead us to cross the line between right and wrong completely disappeared. Stay with us until the end because the answers may surprise you more than you imagine. Redefining law enforcement. Imagine a world where no crimes happened anymore. Without thefts, robberies, homicides, or any other law violations, law enforcement, as we know it, would need a complete transformation. After all, what would thousands of trained officers do when their primary purpose ceases to exist? In this new scenario, the role of the police would change drastically. Instead of responding to criminal emergencies, these professionals could focus on preventive and community activities. Imagine specialized teams teaching children to cross streets safely or assisting in organizing public events, ensuring peace and order. The focus would shift to community welfare, with actions reinforcing values like solidarity, empathy, and cooperation. For example, there could be educational programs on first aid and managing domestic crises. Police could visit schools, communities, and companies to teach how to act in fire or accident situations. Additionally, they could collaborate on environmental initiatives, such as recycling campaigns or the recovery of degraded areas. Another interesting point would be the redistribution of these professionals to areas related to natural disaster prevention. Imagine specialized groups monitoring the climate, helping prevent and mitigate the effects of floods, droughts, and storms. In short, the police would become a preventive and guiding force rather than a reactive one. However, this scenario would also raise questions about the future of the profession. Many officers might decide to pursue new careers, since police work would no longer require the same level of risk and action. Society would need to completely rethink the purpose and training of law enforcement. What about you? Can you imagine living in a world where the police symbolized care and guidance rather than repression? The end of prison systems. In a world where all crimes disappeared, prisons would become a distant memory. These massive complexes, once housing thousands of people, would now be empty. What would happen to these facilities? And what about the professionals who rely on this system for their livelihood? Imagine prisons being transformed into spaces useful for society. Many of these locations could become educational centers, offering free courses to the population. Others could be repurposed as leisure areas, with parks, libraries, or cultural spaces. The former cells could turn into classrooms, sports courts, or even housing for vulnerable populations. One interesting example would be transforming penitentiaries into professional training centers. Workshops on technology, cooking, mechanics, and other fields could be offered free of charge. This would strengthen society by creating new opportunities for everyone. Moreover, prisons could become hubs for sustainable innovation, with projects focused on renewable energy or recycling. Another aspect would be the economic impact. Professionals such as prison guards, forensic psychologists, and prison administrators would need to seek new careers. Governments, on the other hand, would redirect the resources previously spent on the prison system to health, education, and infrastructure. This could lead to an overall improvement in the population's quality of life. However, there would also be a debate about the historical significance of prisons. Should some of them be preserved as museums to remind humanity of the times when crime existed? Imagine guided tours through old cells, telling stories of resilience and change. The end of the prison system would mark a milestone in society's evolution. However, it would require an enormous reorganization in various sectors. It would be a huge step toward a more equal and just world. Economic impact on the legal sector. The disappearance of all crimes would not only affect law enforcement and the prison system, but also completely transform the legal sector. Lawyers, judges, prosecutors, public defenders, and all professionals involved in the prosecution and trial of crimes would have to reinvent themselves. After all, without criminal litigation, What would remain for this system that has played a central role in society for centuries? First, imagine courtrooms that previously handled endless queues of cases now silent. Hearings that once dealt with thefts, murders, frauds, and other crimes would disappear from the calendar. Courtrooms once filled with tension could be repurposed for other functions, perhaps to resolve civil issues like contractual disputes or family problems, though even these would be less common in a more harmonious society. Criminal lawyers would need to redirect their careers to other areas. Many could transition to corporate or environmental law, or even engage in preventive legal consultancy, helping businesses and individuals avoid legal issues before they arise. Prosecutors and public defenders might dedicate themselves to social causes, working for vulnerable groups or promoting public policies. Economically, the impact would be significant. Companies that depend on legal proceedings, such as law firms specializing in criminal cases, would face challenges to stay afloat. On the other hand, this change could boost areas like mediation and arbitration, which would help resolve disputes more quickly and efficiently. Additionally, society would witness a redistribution of the resources previously allocated to the criminal justice system. Imagine the budget that once funded long trials being invested in health, education, or infrastructure. This could create a virtuous cycle of economic and social development. Finally, this scenario would also raise questions about the historical memory of criminal law. How would humanity handle the idea of leaving behind a system that shaped so many laws and institutions? Perhaps museums or research centers would emerge to preserve this legacy and educate future generations about the lessons learned from past mistakes. The transformation of the legal sector would undoubtedly be one of the most profound changes in a world without crime. What about you? Do you think this restructuring would be positive? Changes in surveillance culture. Without crimes, the surveillance culture that permeates our society would undergo a revolution. Think of security cameras, alarms, digital locks, and advanced monitoring systems that have become essential for our sense of safety. In a world where offenses simply cease to exist, the purpose of all these technologies would be called into question. Imagine streets and commercial establishments without cameras watching every move. Companies manufacturing these surveillance devices would likely need to reinvent their products to adapt to the new reality. Perhaps cameras would be used to capture special moments, like community celebrations or cultural events, rather than monitoring potential offenders. Alarm and residential protection systems could be replaced with technologies focused on comfort and efficiency. For instance, sensors that once detected break-ins might be used to monitor indoor air quality or alert about minor water leaks. But the change wouldn't be limited to technology. Our perception of privacy would be completely different. In a world without crimes, the constant feeling of being watched would lose its meaning. People could walk the streets or shop without worrying about cameras or monitoring systems. This would create a lighter, more relaxed environment, where trust and freedom became the pillars of human interactions. On the other hand, some might argue that surveillance culture brought benefits beyond security, such as solving historical mysteries or reconstructing significant events. In this case, monitoring tools might remain in use for documentation purposes, preserving history and collective memory. This scenario would also impact the job market. Thousands of professionals working in private security or as monitoring operators would need to seek new roles, contributing to economic diversification and the development of new industries. The end of surveillance culture would be more than a technological shift. It would reflect a society that learned to live in harmony. A world where trust replaces fear, and freedom becomes more than an ideal, a concrete reality. What about you? Do you think we could adapt to a world without surveillance? A more trustworthy society. Without crimes, society would achieve an unprecedented level of trust. Imagine living in a world where doors remain unlocked, belongings are left in public places without worry, and people help each other without any hesitation. This new reality would represent a true transformation in the way we interact with one another. With the absence of crimes, fear would no longer be a dominant factor in social relationships. Imagine a scenario where you forget your wallet at a cafe and are certain someone will return it intact. Or, on a larger scale, Companies that currently spend millions on security could redirect those resources to innovation, improving products and services, benefiting society as a whole. Children would grow up in a much healthier environment, where mistrust is not taught as a survival instinct. This would shape generations that are more open and collaborative. Public parks, for example, would become even safer spaces for socializing, promoting community bonds and collective activities. Economically, trust would also bring great benefits. Financial transactions would become more agile, as no one would need to worry about fraud or scams. Small businesses could return to operating pay-later systems, and credit between individuals would be based solely on trust and mutual commitment. But the most significant change would be in our mindset. The idea that everyone can be trustworthy would create a sense of community so strong that we would solve problems together. Fundraising campaigns, volunteer efforts, and solidarity initiatives would grow exponentially, proving that humanity is capable of incredible feats when united by a common goal. While it may seem utopian, building a society based on trust would eliminate many emotional and practical barriers we face today. However, it would also require a collective effort to maintain these new standards of coexistence. Can you imagine the impact of living in a place where trust is the norm? We've reached the end of this fascinating journey through a world where all crimes simply disappeared. We explored how society would change profoundly, from the transformation of law enforcement to the impact on the legal sector, the deactivation of prisons, the end of surveillance culture, and finally, the construction of a society based on trust. These ideas make us reflect on the potential for a more harmonious world and how our choices can shape the future. What about you? Do you agree with the changes we discussed? Do you think we missed mentioning any important aspect of this alternate reality? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep following our videos full of intriguing questions and unusual scenarios. Check out the video appearing on your screen now. It will surely leave you just as curious as this one.